Have you ever been judged just because of the way you looked? Have you ever stepped into a place where every glance said, "You don't belong here," before you even spoke a word? Or maybe deep down, you've carried a quiet strength, one that the world laughed at, until it had no choice but to listen. Because today, I'm going to share a story that will stay with you long after the final shot is fired. It's about a simple woman, a faded jacket, an old rifle, and a room full of billionaires who laughed, until she made history and changed everything. What happened inside that elite shooting range wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about smashing walls built by arrogance, and proving that true greatness speaks in silence and precision. In the next few minutes, you'll walk with Harper Lane to the fire of humiliation. You'll see how a lifetime of quiet perseverance led to 10 perfect shots, and you'll witness how one ordinary woman redefined an institution built for the extraordinary. We'll break down what truly makes a person elite. Not wealth, not titles, but heart, grit, and soul. And maybe along the way, you'll find a piece of Harper Lane within yourself too. So if you've ever been doubted, ever been dismissed, ever been told you weren't enough, stay with me, because this story is yours too. Let's begin. Harper Lane wasn't dressed like the others. No designer jacket, no polished boots, no custom-made gear shining under the California sun. Just a faded olive coat, worn jeans, and a rifle that looked like it belonged in a museum more than on a shooting range. When she stepped toward the grand entrance of Hawthorne Elite Range, heads turned, but not in admiration. There, where glass walls gleamed like mirrors and velvet ropes guarded the entrance, Harper looked like an outsider who had lost her way. Some people didn't even bother to hide their smirks. Because here, at this exclusive range where billionaires and champions practiced side by side, appearances meant everything. It wasn't just about shooting. It was about status. The right name, the right look, the right bloodline. Membership fees here cost more than most people's mortgages, and even those who could afford them still needed recommendations, often based on who they knew, not what they could do. In a world like this, Harper's simple presence was almost an offense. And it's not just at shooting ranges. Think about it. How often in life are doors closed not because you lack the skill, but because you don't look like you belong? Maybe it's a job interview where your suit wasn't expensive enough. Maybe it's a party where your accent sounded just a little too different. Or maybe it's just a feeling that no matter how hard you work, someone else's last name gets them farther without trying. The first truth Harper's story reminds us of is this. The world often judges the surface because it's quicker, easier, and lazier. But the surface never tells the whole story. If you've ever felt out of place, if you've ever been overlooked for what's on the outside, know this. Your value doesn't shrink because others can't see it yet. Sometimes, it's the simplest soul in the loudest room that holds the greatest power. But standing in that lobby of marble and steel, Harper knew she wasn't here to argue. She wasn't here to impress. She was here for something much simpler and infinitely stronger. And soon, the world that laughed at her would learn. Appearances can be deceiving, but skill never lies. Because the mockery was only just beginning. It started with a smirk, then a whisper, then a careless laugh that echoed just a little too loud against the marble walls. As Harper stepped further into the Hawthorne Elite Range, the tide of mockery rose around her. Quiet at first, then swelling into open, careless cruelty. One boy in a sleek, $1,000 tracksuit sneered. "They letting janitors shoot now?" Another snapped a photo of her worn boots, captioning it with a cruel joke before the first shot was even fired. And Harper said nothing. She kept walking. Every step steady, every breath calm, every glance from the crowd. Another stone thrown against the wall of her silence. It's easy to believe that mockery comes from strength, that people laugh because they feel superior. But often it's the opposite. Prejudice, especially the loud public kind, is rarely born from real confidence. It's born from fear. Fear that someone unexpected might reveal how fragile their power really is. Fear that their status might not be as secure as they pretend. Fear that talent, real talent, might break through the polished surface they've worked so hard to maintain. Mockery is a defense mechanism, a way to control what we don't understand. Or worse, what deep down we know could threaten us. You see it in school hallways when a quiet, brilliant kid gets teased for being different. You see it in boardrooms when a newcomer with fresh ideas gets dismissed before they finish a sentence. You see it whenever the comfortable are forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that titles and labels aren't enough. And that fear, it always wears the same mask. Laughter with a sharp edge. Harper's silent walk through that gauntlet teaches us something powerful. You don't have to match the noise of the world around you. You don't have to defend yourself to people who are already committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes the strongest move is to stay steady, stay silent, and let your actions speak, because the ones who laugh loudest often fear the most. And deep down, some part of them already knows. You're not here to be laughed at. You're here to change the game. Harper understood that better than anyone. She didn't waste her breath trying to prove herself. She simply moved forward, her father's rifle resting against her back, like a promise yet to be kept. And soon, they would find out exactly who they were laughing at. Because Harper was not just carrying a faded rifle. She was carrying a legacy. The receptionist sneered as Harper approached the check-in counter. He didn't even try to hide it. The amused glance at her jacket, the dismissive wave toward her rifle. VIP lanes are for real members, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. Around her, whispers rose like smoke. She's lost. Probably stole that thing. Get her out of here. And then, without a word, Harper reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, worn card. The scanner beeped once, a sharp, undeniable green. VIP access confirmed. The room fell awkwardly quiet. The smirks faded. But Harper didn't bask in their shock. She just tucked the card away, her hand brushing the smooth wood of her rifle like a silent vow. Because that VIP pass wasn't just a ticket. It was a gift, a debt paid forward from another life. A life full of sacrifice, sweat, and the silent courage of a man who never needed a velvet rope to prove his worth. That pass belonged to her father, Colonel Thomas Lane, a legend in the world of snipers, a man whose aim had ended wars, whose loyalty had saved lives most of the elite could never imagine risking. Harper hadn't bought her way into this place. She hadn't charmed or networked or schemed. She had earned her place through bloodlines etched not in money but in valor. It's easy to assume that every hand that holds privilege did so because they deserve it. But real privilege, the kind that matters, is built on the back of sacrifice, not status. Think about military families who serve generation after generation, or immigrant parents who work 3 jobs so their children can attend university they'll never set foot in. Privilege earned through pain often looks different from privilege inherited through wealth. It's quieter, sadder, stronger. Harper's past teaches us this simple truth. Never assume you know someone's story just by looking at them. Some badges of honor are worn on the heart, not on the sleeve. Some battles are fought silently and paid for with sacrifices that most will never see. The world may hand titles to the loudest voices, but true legacy, true worth, is whispered from generation to generation, carried forward not with gold, but with grit. Harper's presence that day was more than just a reminder of her father's legacy. It was a warning the others didn't yet understand, because no matter how much they mocked her, no matter how many walls they tried to build, there was one thing they could never control: skill. And soon, every eye in that gleaming hall would see what happens when real legacy meets raw talent. If Harper thought the laughter inside the lounge was loud, it was nothing compared to the noise outside. The endless scroll of social media posts, the jeering captions, the cruel snapshots broadcast the world in real time. Phones were everywhere, held high like torches in a digital coliseum. Comments flooded faster than bullets. Nice boots, janitor. Someone lost their thrift shop model. Bet she can't even hit the wall. They didn't just want to mock Harper. They wanted an audience. And the internet, brutal, impatient, merciless, gave them one. In minutes. Harper wasn't just being judged by the elite inside Hawthorne Range. She was being judged by strangers, by algorithms, by millions of thumbs eager to swipe past her failure before it even had a chance to happen. in today's world. Humiliation isn't local anymore. It's live streamed, captured, reshared, and magnified for entertainment. Before you even open your mouth, before you even take your first step, someone, somewhere, is ready to label you, laugh at you, turn your quiet courage into someone else's 15-second joke. The cruelty isn't private now. It's public. It's viral. And worst of all, it feels normal. We've seen it happen. A student nervously giving a speech, and one stammer caught on camera becomes a meme. A young athlete misses a shot, and the whole world piles on before they even leave the field. A woman shows up for a job she's overqualified for, but her shoes or her voice or her age becomes a punchline. It's so easy to forget that behind every blurry phone photo, behind every mocking caption, there's a human heart, beating, breaking, enduring. Harper's story reminds us, the world may rush to judge you before they even know you, but their judgment is not your truth. You are not their likes. You are not their comments. You are not their noise. Strength today isn't just about winning. Sometimes about standing tall, while millions sit back and laugh. And Harper, standing alone with her father's rifle and her mother's hope heavy on her shoulders. She didn't fire back with words. She didn't storm out. She didn't let their noise define her. Instead, she prepared, silently, patiently, because Harper knew something they didn't. When it was her turn to step up to the line, the world wouldn't be laughing anymore. The crowd parted like a tide as Ethan Caldwell stepped forward. He was everything Hawthorne Range celebrated. Tailored tactical gear, a custom rifle worth more than most cars, and a grin that had never once been humbled. With a voice loud enough to reach the live stream microphones, he issued his challenge. If you can beat me, I'll leave this range immediately. But if I win, you walk out of here, janitor. The crowd erupted, their laughter roaring like applause. Phones rose again, screens ready to capture Harper's collapse, ready to feed the world another viral failure. But Harper, she didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She didn't even blink. She simply nodded. A single, steady motion, as if agreeing not to a duel, but to a quiet promise she had made to herself a long time ago. Challenges like this aren't really about skill. Not at first. They're about power, about publicly cornering someone you think is too small to fight back. Ethan didn't expect a battle. He expected a spectacle. He expected Harper to crumble under the weight of hundreds of judging eyes. Because arrogance assumes one dangerous thing. That silence means weakness. That humility means inferiority. But true strength, the kind that doesn't need applause, is quiet, steady, unshakable. Think about all the meetings where a loud, overconfident voice dominates the room, while the quiet thinker in the corner holds the idea that could change everything. Think about the athletes who talk trash all season long, only to lose to the quiet rookie who just kept their head down and did the work. Real strength isn't the loudest voice in the room. It's the one who doesn't need to shout to be heard. Harper's nod teaches us something powerful. You don't have to match arrogance with arrogance. You don't have to fight noise with more noise. Sometimes the most courageous answer is to say nothing at all and let your actions become the only reply that matters. So Harper stepped into her lane, her father's rifle steady in her hands. The crowd still jeered. The cameras still rolled. The laughter still buzzed in the air like static. But in the center of it all, Harper's world had gone perfectly still. Because now, finally it was time. Time to let skill speak louder than any insult ever could. Harper set her feet carefully at the firing line. The world behind her, the whispers, the laughter, the flashing cameras, faded into a low, meaningless hum. All that mattered now was the rifle in her hands, the steady rhythm of her breathing, and a target 50 meters away, waiting. Ethan fired first. Smooth, fast, almost theatrical. The digital scoreboard flashes near-perfect scores, 9.9, 9.810, and the crowd roared its approval. They barely hid their smirks when Harper raised her old M1 Garand, an antique in a world obsessed with shiny newness. An outsider's weapon in a palace of privilege. But then, Harper took her first shot. Ping. A perfect 10. The room fell a fraction quieter. Second shot. Ping. Another 10. A ripple went through the crowd, uncertain, restless. Third shot. Ping. 10. Again. Now the silence grew heavy, thick like a storm about to break. Fourth shot. Fifth. Sixth. Each one a quiet hammer blow against every sneer, every insult, every cruel caption still floating online. Seventh. Eighth. Ninth. Phones lowered. Laughs died in throats. Even the scoreboard seemed stunned, flashing 10 after 10 after 10. And then the final shot. Harper exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger, and landed her last bullet dead center, overlapping the very first. 10 shots. 10 perfect scores. The digital board erupted. New facility record. 100. In that moment, Harper taught everyone watching a lesson most of us forget. Skill is the ultimate equalizer. You can wear designer jackets. You can flash expensive gear. You can stack your titles and trophies to the ceiling. But in the face of undeniable excellence, all the noise, all the arrogance, all the gatekeeping crumbles because talent doesn't care about your bank account. Mastery doesn't care about your last name. Truth, real truth, speaks for itself. And when it speaks, the world has no choice but to fall silent and listen. We see this everywhere. The student who stuns a room full of skeptics with a breathtaking performance. The quiet entrepreneur who disrupts an entire industry while the loudest doubters are still talking. The athlete who trains in silence for years and leaves the world speechless in one unforgettable moment. True excellence isn't always loud at first, but when it finally reveals itself, it's unstoppable. Harper's 10 perfect shots remind us, you don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to boast to be respected. You just have to be ready. Ready for the moment when the world looks at you with disbelief, and you answer with something no amount of mockery can erase. Proof. As the last note of the scoreboard's victory chime echoed off the marble walls. The crowd, once so quick to laugh, now stood frozen. Phones lowered. Smirks disappeared. And in the quiet that followed, something even more powerful began to grow. Respect. For a long, breathless moment after Harper's final shot, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the very air inside Hawthorne Elite Range had shifted, thick with something heavier than shock. Something older, deeper, awe. The same phones that had been raised to record her failure now hung useless at people's sides. The same mouths that had laughed so easily now struggled for words. The same eyes that once saw only a janitor now stare at her with something almost sacred. In 10 shots, Harper had rewritten the story they had already decided for her. She didn't demand their respect. She commanded it, without a single word. What Harper accomplished wasn't just a personal victory. It was a public transformation, the kind you rarely witness up close. Because when someone defies your expectations so completely, when they shatter every assumption you made about them, it forces you to see not just them differently, but to question your own judgment too. And that's uncomfortable. That's humbling. But it's also beautiful. It's in those moments when pride falls and truth rises that real change can begin. We see these transformations more often than we realize. The girl everyone dismissed as too shy becomes a leader everyone looks up to. The boy written off as trouble grows into a man who inspires others to believe. The outsider who was mocked for dreaming too big builds something the world said was impossible. It only takes one undeniable moment to turn mockery into admiration, one act of quiet greatness to change hearts that once held only doubt. Harper's victory reminds us, first impressions can lie, laughter can hide fear, and sometimes the ones we overlook the most are carrying the strongest light within them. The lesson is simple but hard to practice. Stay humble. Stay open. Because the next nobody you mock might just be the person who rewrites your whole definition of greatness. As Harper lowered her rifle and turned to face the silent crowd, something even more profound was happening behind the awe, a crumbling of pride, a quiet reckoning inside hearts that had once been full of scorn. And leading that change was Ethan Caldwell himself, the Prince of Hawthorne, now standing face to face with his own defeat. Ethan Caldwell had always been untouchable, born into power, trained by the best, told from the time he could walk that he was destined for greatness. And for a long time, he believed it. Why wouldn't he? At Hawthorne Elite Range, Ethan wasn't just another shooter. He was a golden boy, the one everyone admired, the one no one dared to challenge. Until Harper Lane. Now, as Harper's perfect score blazed across the digital leaderboard, Ethan stood frozen, his rifle limp at his side, his grin, the one he had worn like armor, slowly crumbling into disbelief. He had mocked her. He had underestimated her. And now, in front of everyone, he was the one who had been exposed. Not Harper, not the janitor. Him. It's a hard truth, but a necessary one. Arrogance is a house built on sand. It looks strong from the outside. It feels invincible for a while. But the first real storm, the first undeniable truth, will wash it all away. Ethan's fall wasn't just about losing a shooting match. It was about losing the illusion of superiority he had worn his whole life. It was about realizing that talent, heart, and discipline would always outweigh entitlement. We've seen this story unfold time and again. The seasoned executive scoffing at a young innovator, only to watch the industry shift under their feet. The star athlete dismissing a rookie until the rookie rewrites the record books. The loudest voice in the room, silenced not by argument, but by excellence. When arrogance meets reality, there's always a reckoning. Ethan's humbling teaches us this. True greatness isn't proven by how loudly you boast or how many people you impress. It's revealed in how you react. When you lose, do you grow bitter or do you grow better? Pride may carry you far, but only humility can help you rise after a fall. As Ethan lowered his head and quietly muttered his first words of genuine respect, the crowd, once eager to cheer him on, now watched in silence, not with mockery, but with something closer to hope. Because in that single, vulnerable moment, a door opened for healing, for change, for a new kind of greatness to begin. And Harper, she wasn't finished yet. When Harper stepped away from the firing line, the air inside Hawthorne Elite Range was different. It wasn't just quieter. It was lighter, as if the very walls, once built to separate the worthy from the unworthy, had begun to crack. The scoreboard still flashed her name, Harper Lane, 100 out of 100, a record no amount of wealth, legacy, or expensive rifles could buy. And standing beneath it, Harper wasn't just a girl who had won a shooting match. She had redefined what winning meant inside those polished marble walls. It wasn't about whose last name opened the door anymore. It was about who could deliver when the world was watching. True change, lasting change, doesn't always come through loud protests or sweeping declarations. Sometimes it comes from a single act of undeniable excellence, a moment so pure, so powerful, that it forces even the most stubborn institutions to reconsider what they value. Harper didn't storm the gates of Hawthorne. She didn't demand respect. She simply showed up, stood her ground, and let her skill do what no speech could ever accomplish. Change the standard. This is how revolutions often begin in real life, too. The first woman stepping into a boardroom full of men, not by shouting, but by outperforming. The first student from an overlooked community earning the highest honors at a university. The unknown artist whose work breaks through the noise, not because of fame, but because of undeniable talent. They don't just succeed for themselves. They lift the ceiling for everyone who comes after them. Harper's triumph reminds us, you don't always have to tear the system down with anger. Sometimes, the quiet power of excellence is enough to shake its very foundations. Your light, when steady and true, can illuminate paths for people you may never even meet. One act of courage, one moment of mastery, one undeniable truth, and the walls that seemed so high, they begin to crumble. As Harper stood beneath her name etched into Hawthorne's leaderboard, she didn't smile widely. She didn't pose for pictures. She simply nodded once, to herself, to her father's memory, to the silent army of overlooked souls she now carried forward. Because while this chapter had closed with victory, another even more beautiful, was just beginning. Victory could have changed Harper. It could have made her proud. It could have made her sharp, boastful, the very thing she stood against. But it didn't. Instead, Harper Lane chose a different path. The quieter, harder one. She stayed humble. She stayed kind. And she stayed true to the reason she picked up that old rifle in the first place. Not to prove herself to the world, but to honor the quiet sacrifices that had built her. Her father's steady hand. Her mother's silent prayers. The small, invisible victories that had shaped her long before the world ever noticed. Winning is easy to misunderstand. For many, it becomes the end goal, the final destination. But for those who truly know what matters, victory is just another beginning. Because real legacy isn't measured by trophies or applause. It's measured by what you choose to build after the cheers fade. Harper didn't just set a record. She set a standard, a new way forward for every soul who had ever been told, you don't belong. We see it in the athletes who, after winning gold, go back to coach the next generation. In the entrepreneurs who, after building empires, create scholarships for those who dream like they once did. In the everyday heroes, teachers, mentors, parents, who pass on not just success, but strength. They understand true greatness isn't what you achieve. It's what you inspire. Harper's journey reminds us the most powerful victories are the ones that make room for others. The most lasting legacies are born not from standing above others, but from lifting others up. You don't need a perfect score to leave a mark on this world. You just need to live your truth, carry your quiet fire, and when the time comes, stand your ground with grace. Because your story, like Harper's, could become the spark that changes everything for someone else. And so, as Harper Lane walked out of Hawthorne Elite Range, not as a girl mocked for her faded jacket, not as an outsider lost among the powerful, but as a woman who had quietly, beautifully, changed the rules forever. She left behind something far greater than a record. She left behind a legacy, carved not into stone or steel, but into the hearts of everyone who had watched and dared to believe again. And maybe, just maybe, she left a spark in you too. Harper Lane's story reminds us of something easy to forget in a world obsessed with appearances and noise. True strength is quiet. True greatness is humble. And true change often begins with the people no one saw coming. Maybe you've been overlooked. Maybe you've been laughed at, doubted, or underestimated. But remember, your value was never up for their approval. Your story doesn't end where they stop believing. It begins exactly where you decide to stand your ground, with grace. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment when you had to prove yourself without saying a word? I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comment below. Glowing star. And if Harper's journey sparked something inside you today, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories that inspire, and share this with someone who might just need a quiet reminder of their own strength. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in the quiet power of truth. Until next time, stay steady, stay strong.